Thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm Melissa Swartz, Senior Manager of Community Engagement at ISACA. Joining me today is a very special guest, Senior Internal Auditor for the American Red Cross, Niki Gomes. Niki, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me today, Melissa.
I have loved working with you as a volunteer for ISACA the last few years. But let's start back at the beginning a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit about your background, where you came from, where you went to school, what you're doing professionally now?
Sure. So, a little bit about my background. I went to school at Liberty University, and I got both a bachelor's degree and an accounting degree, Bachelor of Science and a Master of Science in accounting. And currently, I am doing a lot of different things as an internal auditor. We're working to keep the environment safe at the American Red Cross, working on operational audits and IT audits as well.
Really important work going on over there at the Red Cross. So thank you for supporting such a great organization. Tell me more about your unique career journey. What made you want to transition into internal audit from accounting?
So it was I've had a very interesting journey, and I'll kind of take you back a little bit, like kind of really to the beginning. Initially, I was in hospitality management, and I loved it at the time. I was very young, and so lively environment, very busy, and started at the front desk and worked my way up as I was going to school. At the time, I was going to a different school, but I worked my way up and ended up being an assistant general manager for Marriott Hotels at Courtyard by Marriott, specifically in Williamsburg. And at that time is when I started getting into more accounting practice, and I'm like, I've got this certificate and this schooling in hospitality, but I kind of like the accounting and the backside of things. And so I started to go back to school and take accounting classes. And from that point, I moved over to another job and became an accounting manager. Then I lost my job in 2009, which was with Anheuser-Busch, specifically with Kingsmill Resorts. They did some restructuring and reorganizing then, and a Belgian-based brewing company pretty much purchased them, and a lot of people, a lot of longevity just kind of left, and they said, you don't have a job anymore. So I didn't know what I was going to do. And, I'm just one of those people that never stops. So I decided to volunteer. Initially, I wanted to get a CPA degree because I wanted to prepare taxes in the long run. And so I started to prepare taxes on a volunteer basis for volunteer company called Vita. And as I started to do that work, I started to get into other jobs, and I started to work for the federal government. Got my degrees in both bachelor and master in accounting. And as I decided I didn't want the monotony and the day-to-day of being a CPA and doing day-to-day in and out accounting things, I'm like, I'm not sure what I want to do with this. But I went for a job, another accounting job. And someone that I worked with, a very close supervisor, said, hey, you may want to look into this job with the federal government. Um, it's with Nexcom, and it's an audit job. And I'm like, oh, I don't want that job. I'm too old. I have kids now. I don't want to travel. I don't know how this is going to work out. And so I applied anyway. I got the job. I started to talk to the managers. The managers were amazing. It worked out. It just worked out. I don't know how it worked out. I traveled the world with the job. It was great. And I never really knew a ton about auditing. I think anyone in accounting takes auditing classes, right? Like you have it as a class, and it's really not something that is preached to you as a profession. It's like, here's this one class about auditing, and then we'll move on. Here's this one class about IT, and then we'll move on. So I'm like, all right, but this company invested in me. They said, hey, you've got something, you have some knowledge. Nexcom is a business that has very unique lines of business. And so it's for Navy sailors. There is a hospitality aspect to it, which was something I already had, but now I'd be working on the opposite side. I wasn't running hospitality. I was reviewing the processes, the procedures. And so a lot of unique opportunities for growth there. And there I advanced into elite senior internal auditor and, did very well there. And I decided, actually, I didn't want to travel anymore as much. I didn't want to take a long drive to work. It was very far away from my home. And after a while, it just took a toll on me after my children started to grow. My husband retired, and I was kind of fell into the lap of the pandemic and said, you know what? I'm looking for a remote opportunity. I'm looking for an opportunity that can allow me to do exactly what I'm doing now, but just work from home or not travel as much. And I was able to get on board with the American Red Cross, and it's been amazing. It's very similar to the job that I worked at before. I'm a 100% remote employee, and it inspired me in so many different ways. I just realized that at the American Red Cross, you have a volunteer base, you have a population of people that do this work every day for free, and I get to support that. And so that is, I really think that this was a kind of a divine intervention, and it's where I'm supposed to be. And it even inspired me to start to donate blood again because I've realized how important it is. So it's been quite a journey, but I really feel strongly that I am really where I'm supposed to be right now.
That's incredible. I'm hearing so many parallels between your journey and my journey, and we are operating in completely different industries. But I started off as hospitality and events as well, and then got into association work and decided that the volunteer corps and how I could support them in doing their great work was a passion project for me too. So we have another thing in common, Nikki.
Yeah.
I
Something
love
about the volunteerism, I love to volunteer. And I think that was another thing. Like before, I had a hard time trying to figure out how can I do my job and still find a way to give back. And
Mhm.
working for the federal government, it's a little challenging, but now I have a different dynamic and I'm able to do more outside of my work and for my work. I get to volunteer for my work. My church, as a matter of fact, is hosting a volunteer blood drive tomorrow, blood donation drive tomorrow, and I get to volunteer and give blood. So it's still part
Wow,
of my work.
that's great. Does that allow you more flexibility then too? You talked about having to kind of transition your approach to your career with your kids growing up.
Oh,
So
yeah.
has that transition helped find you some work-life balance? How have you navigated that?
It really, really has, Melissa. I used to feel really, really guilty sometimes when I would work. I mean, I always was able to participate and assist my kids, but it wasn't without running 95 billion miles per hour. I mean, my husband worked full time in a very, very demanding job, and I worked full time in a very demanding job. And I worked about 40 minutes away from my house with a ton of traffic, and my children went to school. We have water in between where I used to work and where I live. And so there's a bridge and a tunnel, and I used to have to cross the bridge and a tunnel several times a day. And in order to get to my children, I'd have to work very early. I'd have to try to leave very early, leave meetings early. And, I always felt this sense of guilt. And none of my coworkers or my management put that on me. It was my own. Like, I feel like so bad having to leave and walk out of this meeting, but I have to be somewhere. I have to get my children. I have to still be a mom. And right now, I feel like I am able to perform at full capacity for my job and not feel guilty about being a parent and doing my job as a parent and taking off as a parent and just still being very productive. So it's definitely changed a lot. I don't feel as bad about taking a little bit of time off for the work I do. So it's much better.
That's good. That's good. That's been a struggle. And I know with the pandemic too, it's opened up so many opportunities for more flexible schedules and working remotely and reducing that commute that so many of us
Right.
were going through. But it presented some other challenges too, with everybody being so close and kids being around all the time and stuff too. So
And it made me feel like at first, I was stressed. I'm like, oh my God, they're gonna see the kids on camera. Like, don't come over here. And after a while, people gave other people grace and were like, we know you
Mhm.
have kids. It happens. It's not a big deal. It's life, right? And
Mhm.
the whole pandemic taught me that, we all live life and things happen, and we shouldn't think any less of other people just because these things happen. And so my child would come on camera and go, hi, and everybody would say hi, and it wasn't a big deal. And actually it was less time that he spent doing that after he noticed people would wave back and he would just walk away. But when I tried to push him away, it wanted him to come back more. So if I just gave him his 5 minutes of fame, life was good. And of course, the teens don't want to be seen. So
Fair, yeah. I love the kids and pets, cameos that keep appearing
yeah,
on calls. I think it humanizes our colleagues too. We see each other in the office in a rather, formal and professional setting. And now it's like, okay, yeah, somebody's screaming, somebody's barking,
right.
got all this stuff going on. And it's like, no, we all have a lot on our plates. So yeah, that balance I think has been important to try to find.
It
So
is. It is.
yeah. So speaking of your kids making cameos, is there any interest? Is this the next generation of IT auditors or blood donors at least?
Well, I do think that my son may have a little bit of interest in technology. He is a technical kind of guy. He's a natural learner and he loves just stuff. He just loves stuff. And so hear me talking about things and he gets very inquisitive and he'll be like, what does that mean? What is PCI? What is SWIFT? Like he listens to these acronyms and he wants to know what does that mean? And I know last year we had an awareness week for the children to learn a little bit more because my husband and I are both, pretty tech savvy. So we teach them, a lot about being conscious when you're online. They spend a lot of time on the computer during the day on work. And sometimes, I have a gamer and, one that loves the phone. And so it's very important that we share the dangers that can come with using tech with kids and they don't realize that they're innocent. One for an example, my daughter loves social media and I had to remind her that, sometimes people on social media are not who they say they are. The picture, that what they're painting, what they're saying is not them. So, right now she understands, but she's not at all interested in doing anything in the tech world. She is very creative and artsy. So I don't think that is going to work out for her, but I'm curious to see what my son is going to do. He's 9, he'll be 10 soon. And so I know that he may be a breakthrough there. And as far, they're too young to donate, but they do give back in their own ways. They do like to do their own little volunteerisms. They do things to help around the neighborhood. And my daughter has also, she plays soccer and she's volunteered for her soccer complex. So she works about 2.5 to 4 hours a week there to assist people to get where they need to go when there are practices and have parents. And I love it because the director of soccer there loves the children and loves the teens and gives them an opportunity. And he always tells them, once you turn 14, you can start hanging out here with me. And then he says, if you're once you turn 16, if you're still interested in being here, you have an automatic job. So,
Good.
you
Good
never
recruiting
know.
there.
So they understand that it's important to help others and be there for others and give back.
Good, good. You're setting a wonderful example. Just, our interactions have been around ISACA, but I know you've been really active supporting the ISACA Conference North America Task Force, the awards working group. You've been an awards reviewer. You've been around so many different activities around ISACA that I can only imagine that your kids are picking up at least on that philosophy of community and giving back. So
I
Kudos to
hope so.
you.
Well, thank you. I hope so. They say, sometimes you don't know if you're getting through to them, but sometimes you have an aha moment somewhere down the road and you're like, yes.
Well, good, good. So, speaking of the next generation, what is, thinking back, when you were kind of just starting out in your career, what is some advice that you might give someone just starting out or that you wish somebody had given you when you were just starting out?
The best advice that I can give right now, I would say, is to be very open, ask lots of questions. Don't be afraid to go against the grain and test, where no one else has gone, because that is where you're going to have a breakthrough. Because I think when I was coming up, I wasn't always, people tell you to ask questions, but they really don't genuinely want them. When I was coming up, ask questions. And then when you ask questions, it's like, oh, we don't want you to know that. There wasn't a lot of that. It was kind of, here's the information. Now just go forth and do it. And I encourage my own children, ask questions. I'm the parent, but I'm not right all the time. I don't know everything. I'm not the expert. And so ask me a question, Mom, why? Or why am I doing this? It doesn't make sense. Ask those questions. One thing I find is because that is where a lot of times when you find people don't like questions, that's where you find there are sometimes issues that need to be resolved. Sometimes it can be fraud, somebody's hiding something. And so they don't want you in their business asking questions because they're trying to manage something that they don't want you to know. And so I really think strongly that if people can just ask questions, be curious, always want to know, and continually learn, always want to learn more.
That's all really great advice. I know that's a lot of practices that I try to instill in myself, even. But that curiosity and that interest in growing and developing, I don't think you should ever stop learning. And especially in the
Right.
tech space, everything is changing so quickly.
It
You're not going to
is.
keep up if
No,
you finish your bachelor's and think you're done. You
no,
know?
by the time you graduate, it's already behind you and it's old.
Yeah.
It's old. And another thing that I would say is, for young people coming into new opportunities and new positions, don't be afraid to take on the challenge that no one else will take on, because that's kind of how I got into this. I took on things that nobody else wanted to do, and I'm like, oh, I really don't want to do this. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to try it. And I had encouragement. So, but yeah, take on challenges and take on projects that people turn down. That'll get
And
you
yeah.
far.
And don't be afraid to fail at them either.
Oh, yeah, I think that's
Failing is a
probably the number
learning.
one lesson. Do
Yeah.
not be afraid to fail.
Learn and grow and move on and
Yes,
do it better next time. Yeah.
that's right.
Good. So you are a woman in a largely male dominated industry. So taking some of those, maybe those lessons that you wish somebody had shared with you, or, or your passion for bringing awareness to Black and Hispanic women in the industry. Can you tell me
hmm
a little bit more about your advocacy there and what you're trying to accomplish?
Yes, there are not, as we know already, there's just not a ton of Black women or Hispanic women or women in general in the tech field. Um, Fear is one of the reasons. It's hard to get into the space when you do have a field that's dominated by men most of the time, because then most people will need a mentor or someone that can really help them through and get into an area where they're not familiar. And what do we like most in a mentor? We want someone that kind of operates like us a little bit, um, can kind of understand where we've come from, where we've been, and where we want to go. And so if there's a need to get more women and more Black women in general and Latin women into the industry and let them understand that it's not easy, but it's very important. And what I haven't really developed an avenue yet, but I would love to partner. I have a young lady here in the Hampton Roads area who partners with young girls, and she takes them from as young as 10, and she has an entrepreneur and leadership group. And so what I have been talking to her about is she brings in speakers all the time, and I want to begin speaking and educating young Black girls and young Latin girls on the importance of kind of going into STEAM, and knowing that it's not always computers, but technology is much, much farther than that. I tell my daughter all the time, you don't want to be in the technology field, but you're always on your phone. You're always on your phone, and you've learned so much about how to manage that phone, that iPhone, sometimes more things than I do about the iPhone because I don't have one. But it's just encouragement. And so that is what I am working to do. I'm working to get myself out there to be a speaker, to educate and help and build the next generation of young Black girls and young Latin girls, so they know that they can be this. If someone would have told me that I could do this years ago, I would have told them, no way, not me, because I didn't think I had what it took. I just didn't have that encouragement until I got into auditing, and then, it was like, oh, you should learn this, you should try this. I don't know, I'm not sure. And I was given the opportunity to step out and just, don't be afraid. One word, don't be afraid to fail. It's okay. If something goes wrong, come back and we'll get some lessons learned. And so it's really important that they experience. I don't think there's enough experiences in schools where they can understand the avenues that they can go in with tech. Yeah. And so you don't have to, be a security administrator. You don't have to be, a cybersecurity admin. There's so many things that you could do with it. I am none of those things, but I'm an auditor and I work on internal audits for the technology field. I work on payment card industry assessments. I've worked on SWIFT payment assessments. And all of this is through reading, understanding, learning, certifying, and having strong mentors and having strong support systems to push you in a direction where it gets a little uncomfortable.
That's a really good point about having role models to not only guide you, but people who have similar experiences or comparable experiences to be able to help you navigate those hurdles.
Right.
You have a lot to offer the next generation for sure.
I hope so. And it's a little challenging because when you go into areas in underserved communities, it's they want someone that's going to look like them. Mm-hmm. They're not familiar with someone that's coming into their community and doesn't really look like them or kind of have the similar experiences and backgrounds. And so they may hear what someone has to say, but they may not take it to heart. And so if they have someone that looks like them and has had similar experiences, similar background, they're like, you know what? Yeah, I can do this. Look at you. You got here.
Well, and using resources like One in Tech.
Yes. Great. Yeah. Love it.
Tech ambassadors, the engaged communities. We're all about connecting people.
Yes.
But it's sometimes it's hard to find the right resources.
It is. Yeah. And I try to do my part in connecting with all of those communities. I go into She Leads Tech and try to give advice and take advice.
It's true though. That's a really good point though. It is a two-way conversation. It's not just going in and pretending that you know everything.
Right.
And imparting wisdom. It's also being a little bit vulnerable and being able to ask questions and better yourself as a professional, as a human, and be able to receive some new ideas as well. So
I think sometimes that's the hardest thing for some people to really do, because which is saying I don't know. Some
Mhm.
people think that, oh, I should just say I know what you're talking about. And at the end of the day, if you don't know, it's okay. And,
Yep.
you know, just say I don't know, but I'm going to find out or I'm going to learn.
That's true. Yeah, I say that to my team all the time too. Like, you don't have to have the answers right away, but
Mm-mm.
go do some research.
Yep.
Ask around, whether it's colleagues or volunteers, or get that feedback that you need.
Right.
Good, good. Well, I know we're coming up on time here, but I wanted to kind of leave this open to you to wrap up here. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with the ISACA world on our podcast?
I would just say that it is a pleasure to be an ISACA member. It is a pleasure to be able to network and participate in all the programs that I've been able to volunteer on and be accepted to volunteer on. And I think that we have to continue to work together and build for the next generation of Black women and young Latin women in tech. We have to find new ways to reach them. We have to find new ways to partner with schools, with businesses to see how we can best do that. And I know there's a lot of efforts out there, but there's not nearly enough to address right now the gap that we have.
That's fair. That's really great parting words here. I do think that it's very much a community approach, and we've certainly appreciated everything you've contributed to our community. Appreciate all of your volunteer service, not only to ISACA but just to the greater humanity too. American Red Cross and your blood donations and your church and all of that too. So you are a role model and an inspiration to us all, Nikki. So thank you very much and keep up the great work there.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's been an honor to be here, really.
Good. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you again, Nikki, for taking the time to chat with me. If you're interested in learning more about the American Red Cross, click on the link in the description below. I'm Melissa Swartz, and thank you for tuning in.